Greetings everyone. We're gathered here to figure out WTF was, is, or will be. USS Thresher. Let's dive in. The USS Thresher, SSN 593, was the first of her class, a nuclear-powered attack submarine in the U.S. Navy, and the second submarine to bear the name Thresher, inspired by the Thresher shark. On April 10, 1963, during a deep diving test approximately 220 miles east of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, Thresher tragically sank, resulting in the loss of all 129 crew members and shipyard personnel on board. This disaster marked a pivotal moment for the U.S. Navy, prompting the creation of a stringent submarine safety program known as SUBSAFE. Thresher was the first nuclear submarine to be lost at sea and the third of 4 submarines to disappear with over 100 people on board. The others were the French submarine Surcouf, which went down with 130 people in 1942, the USS Argonaut, lost with 102 aboard in 1943, and the Russian submarine Kursk, which sank with 118 on board in 2000. Design significance and the impact of loss. When the USS Thresher was launched, it was designed with one mission in mind: to hunt and eliminate Soviet submarines during the Cold War. At the time, Thresher was the fastest and quietest submarine the U.S. Navy had ever built, rivaling the smaller Skipjack class in performance. It was equipped with state-of-the-art technology, including the Navy's newest anti-submarine missile system, SUBSAFE, along with advanced sonar systems that could detect enemy vessels from greater distances than ever before. The significance of Thresher's capabilities was highlighted in a March 1964 article in the U.S. Naval Institute's Journal Proceedings. The commander of Submarine Force Atlantic noted that the Navy had placed such high confidence in Thresher's design that they authorized the construction of 14 more of these submarines, along with 11 others with similar features. This marked the first time since World War II that the Navy felt confident enough in a submarine design to commit to building a large fleet of general-purpose attack submarines. Originally, the class of submarines was named after Thresher, following the Navy's tradition of naming a class after its lead boat. However, after the tragic loss of Thresher on April 10, 1963, the class was renamed after the second submarine in the series, Permit. Thresher, never formally decommissioned due to her loss at sea, remains on eternal patrol, a term used by the Navy to honor submarines lost with all hands. Early career. The journey of the USS Thresher began on January 15, 1958, when Portsmouth Naval Shipyard was awarded the contract to build her. Her keel was laid down on May 28 of that year, and on July 9, 1960, she was launched bow first. Mary B. Warder, the wife of World War II skipper Frederick B. Warder, sponsored the launch. Thresher officially joined the U.S. Navy's fleet on August 3, 1961, with Commander Dean L. Axine at the helm. During 1961 and 1962, Thresher underwent extensive sea trials in the Western Atlantic and Caribbean, where her advanced technology and weaponry were put through their paces. These trials were crucial for evaluating the many new and complex systems aboard. In September 1961, she participated in nuclear submarine exercise 3-61 off the northeastern U.S. coast, a key part of her testing phase. On October 18, 1961, Thresher, accompanied by the diesel-electric submarine Cavala, embarked on a 3-week training cruise to San Juan, Puerto Rico. After arriving on November 2nd, the crew followed standard procedure and shut down the reactor. However, without a shore power connection in San Juan, the ship relied on its backup diesel generator to supply power. Unfortunately, the generator failed after a few hours, forcing the crew to transfer the electrical load to the submarine's battery. With most of the battery's power needed for vital systems and restarting the reactor, non-essential functions like lighting and air conditioning were turned off. Over the next 10 hours, the temperature inside the submarine soared to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite the crew's efforts to repair the generator, they couldn't fix it before the battery was drained. The captain returned just after the battery was depleted, but the crew managed to borrow cables from another ship in the harbor. These were connected to the Cavala, which started her diesels and provided enough power to restart Thresher's reactor. After this challenging experience, Thresher returned to Portsmouth on November 29, 1961, and remained there through the year's end. The first 2 months of 1962 were spent evaluating her sonar and SUBROC systems. In March, she took part in Nuclear Submarine Exercise 2-62, aimed at improving the tactical capabilities of nuclear submarines, and also engaged in anti-submarine warfare training with Task Group Alpha. Thresher then conducted operations off Charleston, South Carolina, to support the development of the SUBROC missile. After briefly returning to New England waters, she moved on to Florida for further SUBROC testing. While moored at Port Canaveral, Florida, she was accidentally struck by a tug, damaging one of her ballast tanks. Following repairs at Groton, Connecticut, Thresher continued her trials off Key West, Florida, before heading back north. On July 16, 1962, she entered Portsmouth Shipyard for a planned 6-month post-shakedown availability to inspect systems and perform necessary repairs. However, as is often the case with the first vessel of a new class, the work extended nearly 9 months. The ship was finally recertified and undocked on April 8, 1963. Sinking. On April 9, 1963, the USS Thresher, under the command of Lieutenant Commander John Wesley Harvey, departed Kittery, Maine, at 8 a.m. The submarine met up with the rescue ship Skylark at 11 a.m. to begin her post-overhaul dive trials in waters about 220 miles east of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. That afternoon, Thresher carried out an initial trim dive, resurfaced, and then completed a second dive, descending to half of her 1,300-foot test depth. Prior to entering the shipyard in late 1962, Thresher had successfully reached her test depth around 40 times. The submarine stayed submerged overnight, and at 6:30 a.m. on April 10th, she re-established underwater communications with Skylark to begin her deep dive trials. Following standard procedure, Thresher gradually dove deeper, circling beneath Skylark to maintain communication. The crew paused every 100 feet to check the submarine systems. As they approached the test depth, Skylark received a series of garbled messages via underwater telephone. The messages suggested that Thresher was experiencing minor difficulties and was attempting to blow ballast, but the communication became increasingly unclear, with one final, fragmented message that included the number 900. When Skylark received no further messages, those on the surface began to realize that something had gone wrong. By mid-afternoon, 15 Navy ships were dispatched to the search area. At 6:30 p.m., the commander of Submarine Force Atlantic sent word to Portsmouth Naval Shipyard to start notifying the families of the crew, beginning with Commander Harvey's wife, Irene, that Thresher was missing. The following day, Chief of Naval Operations Admiral George W. Anderson, Jr. informed the press at the Pentagon that the submarine was lost with all hands. In response to this tragedy, President John F. Kennedy ordered that flags be flown at half-staff from April 12th to April 15th in honor of the 129 submariners and shipyard personnel who perished. Search and recovery. As soon as the USS Thresher was confirmed missing, the Navy launched a large-scale search operation. Surface ships and specialized teams from the Naval Research Laboratory, NRL, were deployed, bringing advanced deep-sea search capabilities to the mission. On April 12, 1963, the NRL's small acoustic research vessel, Rockville, equipped with a unique trainable sonar, set out for the search area. It was followed by teams carrying deep-sea cameras. The ships Allegheny, Mission Capistrano, and Prevail were tasked with conducting a detailed sonar search across a 12-mile square area. Additional vessels, including Atlantis II, Robert D. Conrad, and James M. Gillis, were brought in to investigate sonar contacts. Eventually, the NRL's deep-towed camera system, operated from the Gillis, found debris that was later confirmed to be from Thresher. The Bathyscaphe Trieste, based in San Diego, was alerted on April 11th and transported to Boston. It was prepared for a series of dives into the debris field, with the first set of dives occurring between June 24th and June 30th, and the second series taking place from late August to early September. However, the handling capabilities of the James M. Gillis proved inadequate for managing the deep-towed vehicles, forcing a pause in the search by September. Meanwhile, on April 11, the submarines USS Seawolf and USS Sea Owl, both operating near Thresher's last known location, were ordered to join the search efforts. The limitations of the smaller research vessels like the James M. Gillis in handling deep-sea equipment led the Navy to look for a larger vessel with a design better suited for the task. This search culminated in late 1963 with the acquisition of the Mizar, a ship designed to eventually include a sheltered center well for deploying equipment. In 1964, the search continued with Mizar, now equipped with partial modifications, hoist, and Trieste-2, the successor to the original bathyscaphe. Trieste-2, built with parts from the original submersible, was shipped to Boston on the USNS Private Francis X McGraw. Mizar was also outfitted with a system known as Underwater Tracking Equipment, UT, designed to track its towed vehicles, including Trieste. Before departing Washington, Mizar was equipped with sensitive proton magnetometers provided by Varian Associates, along with underwater video cameras. Mizar began the deep-sea search on June 25, and within 2 days, the wreck of Thresher was found. The submarine's shattered hull lay approximately 8,400 feet below the surface, broken into 5 major sections. Debris from the wreck was scattered over an area covering around 1,440,000 square feet. Key sections of the Thresher, including the sail, sonar dome, bow, engineering spaces, operations areas, and stern planes, were identified. By July 22, much of the submarine had been photographed. In early August, the task force returned to the site with Trieste-2 for further investigation. After 2 unsuccessful dives, the third dive finally succeeded, with the UT guiding Trieste-2 directly onto the wreckage. Initially, the bathyscaphe didn't see the debris because it was resting on it. Trieste-2 was commanded by Lieutenant John B. Mooney, Jr., with Lieutenant John H. Howland as co-pilot and Captain Frank Andrews overseeing the operation. The team recovered parts of the wreckage in September 1964. On July 9, 2021, the Navy declassified details of the Seawolf's involvement in the search for Thresher. Seawolf detected acoustic signals and metal banging noises, which were initially thought to be from Thresher. However, after the commander of Task Group 89.7 ordered a halt to echo ranging and fathometer use to avoid interfering with the search, Seawolf detected no further signals apart from those originating from other search ships and the submarine Sea Owl. Ultimately, the Court of Inquiry concluded that none of the signals received by Seawolf were likely to have come from Thresher or any other human source. Cause: an extensive investigation into the sinking of the USS Thresher involved deep-sea photography, recovered artifacts, and a thorough review of the submarine's design and operational history. The Court of Inquiry concluded that the most likely cause was a failure in a joint of the saltwater piping system, which had been secured with silver brazing instead of welding. Previous ultrasound tests had indicated potential issues with about 14% of these brazed joints, though most were not deemed serious enough to warrant repair. However, on November 30, 1960, nearly 3 years before the Thresher incident, the USS Barble experienced a similar failure in a silver brazed joint near test depth, flooding its engine room with an estimated 18 tons of water in just 3 minutes before it could surface. This was followed by additional failures aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln during its trials. It's believed that high-pressure water from a broken pipe joint on the Thresher may have shorted out electrical panels, triggering a reactor shutdown, or scram, and leading to the loss of propulsion. Further complicating the situation, the ballast tanks failed to blow due to excessive moisture in the high-pressure air flasks, which froze and blocked the flow of air through the valves. This issue was later replicated in tests conducted on Thresher's sister submarine, Tenosa, where ice formation on valve strainers caused the airflow to stop after just a few seconds. To address this problem, air dryers were later added to high-pressure air compressors across the fleet. Typically, submarines rely on speed and angle to surface, rather than using ballast tanks at depth, as blowing the tanks at such depths could cause the submarine to rocket to the surface uncontrollably. The standard procedure involved driving the submarine to periscope depth, checking for clear surroundings, and then blowing the tanks to surface. However, a subsequent study of the SUBSAFE sound surveillance system data from the time of the incident raised doubts about whether flooding actually preceded the reactor scram. The data didn't capture any impact sounds that would be expected from high-pressure water flooding the compartments. Such an event would have generated a significant sonic signature, but the recordings showed no such evidence. At the time, the procedures for operating the reactor plant did not allow for a quick restart after a scram, nor did they permit using the remaining steam in the secondary system to propel the submarine to the surface. Standard practice involved isolating the main steam system to prevent the reactor from cooling down too quickly, cutting off steam to the propulsion turbines. Thresher's reactor control officer, Lieutenant Raymond McCool, a seasoned Mustang with years of submarine experience, was not on board during the fatal dive. His trainee, Jim Henry, fresh from nuclear power school, likely followed the standard procedures and isolated the steam system after the scram, despite the submarine being at or near its maximum depth. Once the large steam system isolation valves were closed, they couldn't be reopened quickly. McCool later reflected that he would have delayed shutting the valves, allowing the submarine to answer bells and possibly surface, despite the flooding in the engineering spaces. Admiral Rickover later noted that these procedures were designed for normal operations and not meant to restrict necessary actions in an emergency. Following the accident, Rickover further reduced plant restart times, which had already been gradually improving with advances in technology and experience. In a dockside simulation conducted before Thresher's final voyage, a scenario of flooding in the engine room showed that it took the crew 20 minutes to isolate a simulated leak in the auxiliary seawater system. At test depth, with the reactor shut down, Thresher would not have had that much time. Even after isolating a short circuit in the reactor controls, restarting the plant would have taken nearly 10 minutes. At the time, it was believed that Thresher likely imploded at a depth between 1,300 and 2,000 feet, though a 2013 acoustic analysis concluded that the implosion occurred at a depth of 2,400 feet. The U.S. Navy has consistently monitored the environmental conditions at the site since the sinking, releasing annual reports on environmental monitoring for U.S. naval nuclear-powered vessels. These reports include sediment, water, and marine life sampling to determine if Thresher's nuclear reactor has had any significant impact on the deep ocean environment. The findings confirm that there has been no significant environmental effect, with the nuclear fuel in the submarine remaining intact. In 2008, the documentary Titanic, Ballard's Secret Mission revealed that oceanographer Robert Ballard, who is credited with discovering the wreck of the Titanic, had been commissioned by the Navy to locate and map the wrecks of both Thresher and USS Scorpion. Ballard had sought Navy funding in 1982 to find the Titanic with a new deep-diving robot submersible. The Navy agreed, on the condition that he first survey the submarine wrecks. Ballard's survey of the Thresher wreckage confirmed that the submarine had imploded and was completely destroyed, with the only recoverable piece being a foot-long section of mangled pipe. His later search for Scorpion in 1985 revealed a similarly devastated wreck, with debris scattered as if shredded. Once Ballard completed these surveys and confirmed that the radioactive threat from both wrecks was minimal, he continued his search for the Titanic using the same debris field search techniques. Most records from the Court of Inquiry remain classified. Although the Navy began declassifying these documents in 1998, they decided in 2012 not to release them to the public. However, in February 2020, following a lawsuit by military historian James Bryant, a federal court ordered the Navy to begin releasing documents by May 2020. On May 22, 2020, in a court-mandated status report, the Navy stated that due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, their Undersea Warfare Division, OPNAVN 97, had put the records review on hold as staff were focused on mission-essential tasks. However, they assured that once the office could expand beyond mission-essential operations, they would resume processing the FOIA request. By July 18, 2020, the Navy reported that additional resources and reservists were being allocated to begin processing the documents in August, and a rolling release of records began on September 23, 2020. The public relations aftermath of this disaster has since been studied in various case studies. Disaster sequence of April 10, 1963. On the morning of April 10, 1963, USS Thresher began her final descent at 7:47 a.m., aiming to reach her test depth of 1,300 feet. 5 minutes later, at 7:52 a.m., she leveled off at 400 feet, contacted the surface, and the crew checked for leaks. None were found. By 8:09 a.m., Commander Harvey reported that the submarine had reached half of her test depth, and by 8:25 a.m., she was cruising at 1,000 feet. Thresher continued to descend slowly and cautiously, circling beneath the submarine rescue ship Skylark. At 9:02 a.m., as the submarine turned to a new course, the quality of the communications began to degrade, possibly due to changes in water temperature known as thermoclines. Despite this, Thresher continued to communicate her position. At 9:09 a.m., the Navy's investigation later suggested that a brazed pipe joint in the engine room likely ruptured around this time. The crew would have immediately attempted to stop the leak, but the engine room would have filled with a mist of high-pressure water. Commander Harvey likely ordered full speed ahead, maximum rise on the fairwater planes, and an emergency blow of the main ballast tanks to bring the submarine to the surface. However, the rapidly expanding pressurized air caused moisture to freeze in the temporary strainers, which were meant to protect the moving parts of the valves during construction. This blockage prevented the ballast tanks from being blown. The water leak may have caused electrical shorts, leading to an automatic shutdown of the reactor and loss of propulsion. The crew would have then shifted to battery power and worked to restart the reactor, a process that would take at least 7 minutes. At 9:12 a.m., Skylark attempted to reach Thresher via the underwater telephone, known as Gertrude. When no response came, Skylark repeated the signal K twice, still unaware of the critical situation unfolding below. A minute later, at 9:13 a.m., Commander Harvey managed to send a garbled message through the underwater telephone. Though unclear, some words were distinguishable. "We are experiencing minor difficulty, have positive up angle, attempting to blow." It is believed that the submarine was becoming heavier due to the flooding in the engine room, causing it to descend further, possibly tail first. Another attempt to blow the ballast tanks likely failed again due to ice formation. The officers on Skylark heard the hiss of compressed air over the loudspeaker. At 9:14 a.m., Skylark responded with a quick "Roger, out," and awaited further updates. To reassure Thresher that she could surface safely, Skylark sent a follow-up message indicating that there were no contacts in area. By 9:15 a.m., Skylark's captain, Lieutenant Commander Hecker, tried again to communicate with Thresher, asking for the submarine's range and bearing. When there was no response, he sent another message, "Are you in control?" At 9:16 a.m., Skylark received a garbled transmission from Thresher, recorded in the ship's log as 900N. The meaning of this message was unclear, though it may have referred to the submarine's depth or course, or it could have been a Navy event code, with N possibly indicating a negative response to the query about control. At 9:17 a.m., Skylark received another transmission with the partially clear phrase, "exceeding test depth." Quote. The suspected leak in the engine room was likely worsening as the submarine descended deeper. A minute later, at 9:18 a.m., Skylark detected a high-energy, low-frequency noise, which is characteristic of an implosion. Skylark continued to try to contact Thresher, repeatedly calling for a radio check or any other sign of the submarine's condition, but no response was received. At 11:04 a.m., Skylark transmitted a message to COMSUBLANT, Commander, Submarines, Atlantic Fleet, unable to communicate with Thresher since 0917R. Have been calling by UQC voice and CW, QHB, CW every minute. Explosive signals every 10 minutes with no success. Last transmission received was garbled. Indicated Thresher was approaching test depth. Conducting expanding search. However, due to radio issues, COMSUBLANT did not receive the message until 12:45 p.m. Hecker initiated Event SUBMISS, procedures at 11:21 a.m., signaling the loss of a submarine, and continued to attempt to contact Thresher until after 5 p.m. During the 1963 inquiry, Admiral Hyman Rickover emphasized that the loss of Thresher should not be attributed solely to the failure of a single component or system. Instead, it was a result of broader issues in the design, construction, and inspection practices permitted within naval shipbuilding. He urged a re-evaluation of these practices, cautioning that in the pursuit of technological advancement, fundamental principles of good engineering may have been overlooked. Alternative theory of the sinking, electrical failure. On April 8, 2013, Bruce Rule, who served as the lead acoustic analyst for the U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence for over 42 years, published a new analysis regarding the sinking of the USS Thresher. His findings, based on classified data from the USS Skylark and Atlantic SOSUS arrays, were detailed in a paper for the Navy Times. This data had been highly classified in 1963 and was neither discussed during the court of inquiry nor revealed at congressional hearings. Citing Rule's analysis, a retired Navy captain who previously commanded a submarine of the same class as Thresher has urged the U.S. government to declassify this information and consider an alternative sequence of events based on the acoustic data. Rule's analysis suggests that the primary cause of Thresher's sinking was an electrical failure in the bus that powered the main coolant pumps. According to the SOSUS data, after 2 minutes of electrical instability, the bus failed at 9:11 a.m., which caused the main coolant pumps to shut down. This triggered an immediate reactor scram, leading to a loss of propulsion. Thresher was unable to blow her ballast tanks because ice had formed in the high-pressure air pipes, causing the submarine to descend uncontrollably. Rule argues that flooding, whether from a failed silver braze joint or another source, did not play a role in the reactor scram or the sinking. He believes the submarine remained intact until it imploded. Supporting this theory, Rule points out that the SOSUS data did not record any sounds indicative of flooding. Moreover, the crew aboard Skylark, which maintained communication with Thresher, did not report hearing the loud, distinctive noise that would have been expected if high-pressure water had flooded the compartments. Even the previous commander of Thresher testified that he would not have described flooding, even from a small pipe, as a minor problem. Rule interprets the 900 communication from Thresher at 9:17 a.m. as a reference to depth, suggesting that the submarine was 900 feet below her test depth of 1,300 feet, or 2,200 feet below the surface. According to Rule, the SOSUS data indicates that Thresher imploded at 9:24 p.m. at a depth of 2,400 feet, which is 400 feet below her predicted collapse depth. The implosion occurred in just 0.1 seconds, far too quickly for anyone aboard to perceive. SUBSAFE legacy. When the Court of Inquiry concluded its investigation, it strongly recommended that the Navy adopt a more stringent program for design reviews and safety inspections during submarine construction. This recommendation led to the creation of the SUBSAFE program, which was officially launched in December 1963. Prior to SUBSAFE, from 1915 to 1963, the U.S. Navy had lost 16 submarines to non-combat accidents. However, since the introduction of SUBSAFE, only one submarine has met a similar fate, the USS Scorpion, which sank in 1968 under still unknown circumstances. Notably, Scorpion was not SUBSAFE certified. Memorials. The legacy of the USS Thresher has been honored through various memorials across the United States, ensuring that the sacrifice of her crew is never forgotten. One of the most significant memorials is at Arlington National Cemetery, where a memorial stone was placed in July 1967 for a lost Thresher sailor. This tribute was further enhanced on September 26, 2019, with the dedication of a new Thresher memorial at the same site. Permanent tributes to the Thresher are widespread. At the Portsmouth Navy Yard, where the submarine was built, the chapel was renamed Thresher Memorial Chapel. In Portsmouth, New Hampshire, a stone memorial with a plaque outside the Albacore Museum honors all those who were lost on the Thresher. On the West Coast, just outside the main gate of the Naval Weapons Station in Seal Beach, California, stands a Thresher Scorpion Memorial, commemorating the crews of both submarines. In Eureka, Missouri, A marble stone at the post office on Thresher Drive honors the officers and crew lost on April 10, 1963. Salisbury, Massachusetts, named Robert E. Steinell Memorial Park after Thresher crewman and Salisbury resident sonarman First Class Robert Edwin Steinell. In Nutley, New Jersey, and Denville, New Jersey, monuments were erected to honor Thresher crew members Purvis Robison Jr. and Robert D. Carney, respectively. Thresher Avenue in Naval Base Kitsap, Washington, also serves as a lasting tribute to the submarine. In Kittery, Maine, a 129-foot flagpole at Kittery Memorial Circle was dedicated on April 7, 2013, marking the 50th anniversary of the loss of the Thresher and honoring the 129 lives lost. Another Thresher monument stands in Memorial Park, adjacent to the Kittery Town Hall. A memorial to the submariners lost on the Thresher and the Scorpion is located on Patriots Point Road in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Additionally, Naval Submarine Base New London in Groton, Connecticut, named an enlisted barracks, Thresher Hall, in honor of the submarine, with a plaque in its lobby displaying the names of the crew, shipyard workers, and contractors who perished. In September 2019, a commemorative monument was dedicated at Arlington National Cemetery. In Malba, New York, a plaque on a World War II memorial boulder at the base of a flagpole at the marina honors local Thresher seaman Richard K. Fisher and his lost shipmates. Former tributes include a swimming facility in Carpentersville, Illinois, named after Thresher by the Dundee Township Park District, though it has since been closed and demolished. On April 12, 1963, President John F. Kennedy honored the Thresher's crew by issuing Executive Order 11,104, which ordered all national flags to be flown at half-staff. The Thresher story has also inspired several folk songs, including Ballad of the Thresher by the Kingston Trio, The Thresher Disaster by Tom Paxton, The Thresher by Phil Ochs, The Thresher by Pete Seeger, and Thresher by Shovels and Rope. The Thresher's loss also inspired an episode of the 1964 television series Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, titled The Fearmakers. The episode, written by Anthony Wilson, features the submarine Seaview searching for a missing submarine, Polydor, echoing the tragic loss of the USS Thresher. As we reflect on the story of the USS Thresher, we are reminded of the immense courage and dedication of those who served beneath the waves. The loss of Thresher was a tragic chapter in naval history, but it also led to critical advancements in submarine safety through the SUBSAFE program, ensuring that such a disaster would never happen again. The numerous memorials dedicated to the Thresher and her crew stand as lasting tributes, not just to their memory, but to the enduring spirit of those who put their lives on the line in service to their country. Their sacrifice has not been forgotten, and their legacy lives on in the lessons learned and the lives saved. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. May we continue to honor the bravery and commitment of the Thresher's crew and all who serve, as we look to the future with the hope that such sacrifices will never be in vain.